So as Diana said, we're going to talk about purpose. Power of purpose is never been more important, especially in these times. I'm joined by three amazing people that I've worked with for a bunch of time, but each of them are in a very new role right now, so I'm calling them the freshman class. So if you want to introduce yourselves before we get going.
Sure thing. Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining today. I'm Sylvia Banderas, and I am the new EVP of Talent, People, and Upskilling. It's a mouthful. At the 4As. The 4A stands for, well, I'm sure you all know, but the American Association of Advertising Agencies. And our role is to empower and advocate for the organizations and leaders that drive our industry.
Hi, I'm Carolyn Dettman. I am the Interim CMO and Growth Operational Officer at World Business Chicago. Welcome to Chicago, everybody. And I've been in this role for 5 weeks, but I still beat you, right? Because you're at week 3. You're at week...
Yeah.
Yes, we're tied at 5. Prior to that, I was the CMO and Chief Creative Officer at the Female Quotient.
I'm McCarty. I'm the president of the Mental Health Coalition that was started by Kenneth Cole about 5 years ago during the pandemic. And our goal is to end the stigma of mental health. We are a coalition of 50 of the largest and most well-known mental health organizations in the nation.
Well, this is a very important topic, and as Diana said, it's not a new topic, but I think it's a topic that needs a lot of attention right now, especially in these times. You know, purpose has a distinct role to play in every business, and today we're going to discuss the power of purpose and how it really pushes boundaries of innovation to bring clarity into every aspect of the organization, from the C-suite to the factory floor. I think it's really important to discuss the good that can come when everyone at the organization knows the purpose and it's embedded into the organization. And not only is it the right thing to do, but it's also good for business. And we hear that phrase all the time, but what does that really mean today? Because I feel like we've lost sight of a lot of the things that actually matter and make companies who they are and the fundamentals of who they are. So the first question, and any of you can take this first, we're living in unprecedented times, socially, culturally, and politically. Many people are hesitant to speak up or show up as their authentic selves, and that extends to corporate America. What are each of you seeing in your world right now?
Well, I've certainly seen a quiet retreat, maybe not as quiet as I'm stating. But I think in many ways, the politicization of things like DE&I, it's turned into this political football. And something that I think is really important is that we cut through that red herring and take a step back and focus on the numbers and realize that this isn't not only because it's not an and, it's not an or, it's an and. Not only is it important from a moral standpoint, but it's also important for the bottom line. When we look at the numbers, just for instance, 75% of all consumers say that they care about whether or not a brand leverages representation. And according to Kantar, that helps them decide whether or not they're likely to purchase it. And that's a bottom line figure. When we think about the census and just the reality of the demographics in America, one of my favorite statistics is plus 287% of Americans, of multiracial households. There's a growth of 287% of households in America that now identify as multiracial. Demographics, in many ways, are destiny, and I think it is a shame that we've turned this into a political conversation, because in reality, the numbers don't care about the politics. The numbers are the numbers. And it is going to future-proof your business or serve as a risk if you don't ground yourself in the data.
I'll go. I think there is a lot of fear and a lot of fatigue. That's what I'm certainly seeing. I'm sure we probably would all agree with that. I think I know where the fear is coming from. The fatigue, on the other hand, I don't think it's fear of purpose. I don't think it's fear of DEI. I think it's fear of performative purpose and fatigue of performative purpose and of performative DEI. I think that's where the fatigue set in, and I think that's where we all probably did ourselves a bit of a disservice when people jumped on, frankly, the purpose and DEI bandwagon, but didn't put accountability with it. And so I think what you're seeing now is sort of a reckoning of that, and we're seeing who's staying with it. Those are the ones that made themselves accountable to it, and we're seeing that really pay off for the ones that were accountable. And I think that's actually progress.
One of the reasons I wanted to have you on the panel, Carolyn, besides you and I have known each other a really long time, is the fact that you've joined World Business Chicago. Chicago's been in the news so much.
It has?
I know. Not for always the right reasons. And, you know, I had, as I mentioned, we were prepping, like I had multiple people say to me, are you going to be safe in Chicago? So how are you guys combating this?
Well, let me start with the answer to that question, which is yes, you are going to be safe in Chicago. So I think while this narrative about Chicago and the unsafety bits that you're hearing are actually don't reflect the data. So we're gonna talk a lot about data. So actually, across all violent crime, this city is down by over 20%. We had the safest summer on record since 1962. Now, who here has heard that news? Who's heard about all the crime in Chicago? Yeah. So while when I took this job all of 5 weeks ago, I wasn't thinking that was going to have to be a key message point. But the reality is when you are on the front lines of economic development and attracting investors and business and talent to this city, safety matters. And so you have to fight that, right? And you have to change your narrative and make sure you're getting out there with the actual facts. So yes, so I hope you all enjoy Chicago. We brought you a lovely, beautiful fall day, did we not? And so yes, that is something that we were definitely talking about.
And Phil, you and I have worked together from the FIT Foundation. Now you're at the Mental Health Coalition. What are you seeing in your work and since you joined Kenneth Cole?
I think a lot of what I'm seeing is the employee-driven purpose, meaning that the employees really are asking for this and, quite frankly, expect it. If you look at Deloitte just recently put a survey out to say that 89% of Gen Z and millennials expect purpose in the workplace, and more young employees feel like their work is their purpose. So I think that's very important to keep in mind because we, at one time, were very focused on the consumer when it came to cause marketing and purpose and where this all evolved from. And now it really is employee-centric, and that's what we're seeing. And, of course, well-being in the workplace is so critical, more so now than ever. And I know we'll talk about that a little bit more, but that really has become the center point for what we're doing at the Mental Health Coalition is starting in the workplace, and how can we solve there for it to then extend outward.
Can I just build on what you just said, which is we just made a hire. I loved this so much. Gen Zer, who's interviewing, and not surprising, they asked about our mission and vision and values. But what made this so different was they didn't ask me what we believed in, they asked me what we budgeted for.
Yeah.
So
That's right.
if we don't think that they're paying attention, not to just what you're saying your values are, but actually where you're putting your dollars against that, we're kidding ourselves. So that would, and by the way, we hired this person, so hands off.
And I would just like to add to that in terms of, from a talent perspective, I find that the positive psychology, we often underrate it, and it's really critical because everything from more cognitive resilience to a counterweight to stress and depression, and even an extension of lifespan are all tied to how people feel their work gives them purpose.
Sylvia, I was going to ask you, building on what Carolyn talked about around talent and next-gen talent, you're the new head of talent for the 4As, which works with a lot of agencies across the industry. Why did you take this job, and what do you think we need to do more of in the industry to really attract the best talent? That's a big question, but...
Yeah, I mean, but I read a statistic. The World Economic Forum stated that 50% of the entire U.S. workforce is going to have to be reskilled by 2027. And that just kept me up at night. So I thought, gosh, I don't want to watch this from the sidelines. I want to be part of leading this. And I've always been a teacher at heart. I really believe that upskilling should be part of your culture, not a silo, not something you do as a one-off workshop. But in the age of AI, it has to be part of your core strategy because the constant evolution is going to demand that. We really need to evolve and invest not just in the tools, but in the human beings that are going to be responsible for making sure those tools are being leveraged ethically and optimized, right? So that's why I took this role, which is a little different than what I've done in the past.
Phil, talk a little bit about your new role. You've been at the Mental Health Coalition for a little bit now.
I have, and it's interesting to see the crisis. I would say that this is probably one of the largest that we've had in the U.S., if not the world, and to see the stigma still there. It's come a long way, but there's still absolutely stigma that is involved, and that's one of our key responsibilities and roles at the Mental Health Coalition is to really look at how do we remove that stigma, how do we get conversations going. So one of our biggest pushes, which is perfect for this audience, really comes down to communications, comes down to marketing. Often nonprofits are not allowed to spend on marketing and advertising and PR. It tends to be what donors do not want you to spend their money on. And the reality is they need it. They need that most. Nonprofits and purpose-driven organizations need to make that investment, and they need to be able to tell the story. So that's one of the big things that we're focusing on, and also how to equip all of these nonprofits who are part of the coalition. How can they tell their story more effectively? The other thing we're trying to look at is, as a coalition, how do we create something that is not repetitive? How do we look at the strengths of each organization? I often say that there are too many nonprofits in the world. And I will stick by that. I think that nonprofits need to look at more coalitions. I think they need to meet, quite frankly, I think we need more mergers and acquisitions, so to speak, within the nonprofit world because it's being diluted, much of what these nonprofits are doing. And so that's one of the big things that we're trying to work on is keeping that focus, but also helping everyone understand where their strengths are and where they can collaborate and not step on each other.
I'm going to start with another bigger question. I want to hit D&I. D&I, we all know, is under pressure right now with so many companies backing down, changing language, scrubbing websites, eliminating departments at the fear of facing backlash. What are you seeing in your work? What have you experienced?
As I said, I really felt like it's been a quiet retreat, but the numbers prove otherwise. In terms of what I think has made it so hard, to Caroline's point, is that they were often seen as taglines or press releases and not as proper business imperatives that were fully brought into, from a talent strategy to product to even the supply chain. And that's really where purpose lives. It's ethos in action, whether it's DEI and inclusion or whether it's a broader purpose. I think it's about living your ethos and your actions and not just talking about it in a press release. And because so many companies, change is hard. I don't think that that's up for debate, but the reality is that if many of our systems haven't fully changed from their core, all of these promises, when the going gets hard, just sort of fall away. And that's what I've observed.
Carol?
Oh, at World Business Chicago, this got really interesting really quickly, which is diversity, inclusion, belonging. That is what Chicago, the city, actually stands for. So it's not just a slogan, it's actually our economic differentiator.
Yeah.
Right.
And so but all that said, there were some questions, like strategically, like should that still be our differentiator? And that's the fear that we're talking about, right? But what I'm so proud, I mean, so proud of the city of Chicago and everything that it's going through right now. You see how important our diversity and inclusion and belonging is. We're proving it over and over and over again. And I get to now be on the front lines when we're trying to attract the next big conference to the city of Chicago, or the next, startup to the city of Chicago. And what matters is they want people who come to a conference or come work for them, they want them to feel safe. They want them to feel like they belong. And so while they may not call that DEI, that's exactly what that is, right? And so, so make no mistake, it's very much still. I mean, for us, it's the reason why we're winning, and so we're not retreating. We're going to keep going down that path because that's who Chicago is.
Right.
I would probably go back to my time at FIT when we started the Social Justice Center a number of years ago, which was a phenomenal opportunity to really give a new pathway to BIPOC students who were many not even privy to what was available in the creative industries for careers and what have you. And we started that Social Justice Center with scholarships, with mentorships, with internships, as well as our entire pre-college program. And then over the last year and a half, we've really had to be creative and careful about what was done with the Social Justice Center, and even the name Social Justice, we've really had to reconsider and tone down a bit. Unfortunately, I would like to say we power through and we're not worried about it, but being a public college, as part of the SUNY system, we have to keep all this in mind and be very careful about protecting. What I will say in learning through that was, and it goes back to what Caroline was saying, is that you have some companies who did this and they retreated, and others who have really fought the fight and then continue to move forward. And all three of the founding companies, Capri, PVH, and Tapestry, have continued with the Social Justice Center, and I commend them for that. And they have actually really continued to look at their efforts and to move forward with all of their DEI efforts. Many of them are calling them culture and belonging efforts now. So there has certainly been a repositioning of that, but I think that it's very commendable to see that they made that commitment as founding partners, and not only have seen it through, but are even putting additional funding into the Social Justice Center. So I think those are the types of companies that we have to really keep an eye on and realize that they are out there. There are those who are standing by and continuing to move their efforts forward. It just takes a little bit of creativity right now.
Yeah, I mean, just a thought, and it just came to me right now, but stop calling it whatever it seems to be what everyone's so scared of, and call it what it is, which is innovation. Every company says they're innovative. You cannot be an innovative company and actually keep people diversity out of innovation. That's just that doesn't work, right? So again, I'm gonna always always side on the side of innovation, right? But we're so every company wants to be innovative. Well, if you are not doing DI correctly or authentically, you are not innovative.
That's
right? Ask that question.
That's right. It's two sides of the same coin. And I also think if we look at the opportunity of those who have fully embraced it, think about brands like e.l.f. I mean, right now, they're probably the biggest beauty brand in terms of just the press that they're getting and marketing. And it goes beyond marketing. And I think that's why they're so successful. And so it does go to show that when you do it well, when you stand by your initiatives and make them more than an initiative, make them core of your business. When purpose is core to your business, you do win.
Yeah, the Social Justice Center, I mean, the vision and the commitment, what was done at FIT from the guidance and the leadership of Dr. Joyce Brown, who was someone we worked with for a very long time, who's just retiring after 27 years. But to your point, Carolyn, we talked about the fact that it's innovation. I feel like we were very much out there talking about social justice and D&I, and then the last couple of months we really pulled back. But I was like, we really need to lean into innovation because you're doing the work. You've done stuff that other schools haven't done. And with Phil's leadership and the folks that he brought to the table from a funding perspective, it made it possible.
Well, you know what's not getting defunded? The Innovation Center.
Right. Yeah.
Right? I
Yeah.
mean, who knows better
Sure.
than PR and advertising people, right? The
Right.
words we choose matter, but, we have to start to reframe the words that do matter. Innovation is DEI.
That's right. I mean, the biggest killer of creativity and innovation is groupthink.
So thinking about, why it is so difficult. Why do we think it's become so hard? Is it just the political world we live in right now? What do you all think?
Legacy systems. I think change is really, really hard. And these systems were not built for equity. And so when the going gets hard, I think it was very common for a while that most of these initiatives were press releases and taglines and marketing campaigns. And it's hard because we saw backlash. A lot of us really scratched our heads and said, is this performative or is this real? Can I trust this brand? Can I trust this employer? They say all this nice stuff, but in their day-to-day, nothing's changed. And I think it's almost like a hangover that we're seeing.
I would probably take it a little beyond the political aspect as well and say that it's a cost factor. And what I mean by that is companies, if they're truly going to commit to this, it's an investment.
Right.
And it's an investment of time and it's investment of energy, but it is an investment from a true financial standpoint.
Right.
Because we've evolved from the days of cause-related marketing or whatever these wonderful little campaigns, and it was, it used to be fun.
Right.
Yeah, and not that it's not fun now, but it has become very serious in that you're looking at supply chain, you're looking at sustainability as a whole, you're looking at your workforce, you're looking at your workforce's well-being. You are certainly looking at your customer. You're looking at a very wise and savvy customer now who is questioning. And so when they're doing that, they are going to delve deep. And that means that you have to have every T crossed and every I dotted in the best way possible. And that means investing. That means that you are going to have to take some from a revenue standpoint and invest back into purpose as a whole. So I think that that's causing issues for a number of companies now because they either don't have the bandwidth or that's not an investment they want to truly make. And if they don't make it as a true investment, then it will be uncovered. So I think that's a big piece to it.
So it was a PR stunt.
Yeah.
So how do we keep brands accountable? Carolyn, you want to take that one first?
I mean, the person we just hired had it sorted. We should all be asking, right, of our companies, what are you budgeting for, right? Versus, don't give me your values, but what are we actually budgeting for? I think we should start calling it innovation, because they definitely budget for innovation.
Right.
Listen, again, the reason why I started talking about the fear, I do think the fear is very political, right? And it will have its time, and and we will move on. I think, though, we will be better for it. I think we will have made progress because I think what we got really comfortable in was the performative piece,
Right.
Versus the authentic piece of it. And I know that word is overused, but that's actually what we're talking about. The folks that are authentic about it budgeted for it, and they continue to stand by it. And I think where we've seen some brands fall down is when they've been out and in front with a marketing message, and then when the going got tough, they backed away, right? So there are case histories, and you rightfully mentioned e.l.f. I'm obsessed with e.l.f. I'm obsessed with Corey, the CMO there. How many people know they just went through a crisis at e.l.f.? You don't, because they have built up so much goodwill from their efforts that when a crisis just happened with e.l.f., nobody talked about it, and that is because people gave them grace.
Right.
Because of all the authentic work that they've done in the space. Had that not been the case, I think a lot of hands would have been raised.
Yeah.
And so we oftentimes don't think about, the protection reputationally that when you're authentic at this, it gives you.
Yeah, I also think consumers are, when you ask the question, how do you keep a brand accountable? I think consumers are doing a great job because we forget that they vote with their wallets. And more with the younger generations, they do care deeply about whether or not whatever they're buying into reflects their values. And we've seen it. We've seen it on both sides. We've seen it with Elf, and we've seen it with a retailer who just laid off 1,800 employees because the effect of people boycotting has really hurt their business. I've also seen it in the smallest ways with a brand, I think it's called Nature's Sweet. And it blew my mind because you open the lid and it's the coolest little scan. It's a QR code, you scan it, and it shows you the farm worker that picked your tomatoes and tells you their story at a time when human beings, particularly farm workers, are being dehumanized. This was just such a beautiful moment, and the amount of press that they're getting and what that's done for their brand, but it's also real. People are gonna vote with their wallets. You saw what happened with Disney. First Amendment, started to get questioned, and Jimmy's back. So I think the biggest way we're gonna see brands become accountable is gonna be bottom line impact, and whether or not they're gonna have successful future-proofing strategy if they don't, start activating these things, because it's innovation.
And the employees are, to your point earlier about employee engagement, employees are almost holding companies more accountable than the customers today.
Yeah, they absolutely are. And the one thing that's interesting is that, well, employees probably over the last couple of years have been more vocal than maybe in the past, even about their own workplaces. I think that unfortunately we might see a little bit of a shift there just because of the workforce right now and what everyone is going through. So I think that's something that's going to have to be a reality. But I would also say, in addition to voting with our wallet, voting with your voice. And that is that we live in this world of content, social media, and constant communication and connection with everyone, and you're seeing people really be able to disseminate a message unlike any that we've ever been able to do. And so also being very vocal, with one caveat, that to fact check. I think that that's going to be a critical piece to all of this, that as people are talking more about these brands that are doing good and brands that are not doing good, I think that we're going to see more and more of that through social.
Yeah, my understanding, and I can't say this is facts because I do not work there. My understanding with the Disney situation and Fallon in particular, that those days that we were all waiting with bated breath what was going to happen, the Disney employee base was very vocal about what they wanted.
Yeah.
So to your point about be vocal, I think that's a really good example where they were vocal, and ultimately I think they were heard.
Phil, back to one more point about how your organization really supports employees and really working with the organizations that are part of the Mental Health Coalition to really support employees, which honestly right now people need more support than ever. It's very challenging times. What type of advice are you offering the companies that you're working with for their employees?
Yeah, we're seeing some really unique programs out there. So one of the things, we actually have something big coming up in December called our Wellbeing at Work Day on December 2nd, where we bring together companies to talk about best practices and what's in the workplace and what's working. And it's even small things. We have a few companies, Aetna and Airbnb and some others, they do canine therapy for their employees, where they bring the therapy dogs in for a day just for them to have a little bit of relief. We have some companies who have recharge rooms, which are really phenomenal, and it's kind of built on this biophilic concept. We're bringing the outdoors inside and people having an opportunity to just step away, recharge, refresh, and what have you. So we're seeing that. And then you have someone like a Unilever who has developed an entire program where they have trained about 2,000 employees to be well-being and mental health advocates and really kind of connecting points within the company so that there's safe space because often what we find is that employees are not comfortable telling a boss
Right.
necessarily, but they are comfortable telling a peer, and if there can be trust there, and building it that way. So some of those programs I think are starting to grow and build, and although those may not be huge leaps, it's those moments that employees are looking for, and that's what we're wanting to get more of. Is just these touch points that really help in day to day.
Gotcha. And Sylvia, your role is really supporting agencies from a perspective of talent and employee engagement. How are you helping? I mean, I know you're just new to the role, but what's your vision of how you want to help agencies right now with all the things they need to do with their employees?
That's thank you for the question. I believe that one of the most important things we can do is educate and reskill, especially right now. We're seeing a gap form in the bottom of our pipeline pyramid, and the big question is, well, what's going to happen from 5 years from now if there's no pipeline to bring in? So our focus is really about upskilling and training and ensuring that human ingenuity is seen as the most important technology. Outside of that specifically, I would say we do think it is a mindset shift. It's not just about craft skills.
Right.
It's also about vertical development. And the future of work is a lot more, I want to say, positive psychology is going to play a much bigger role. And that's also going to be a part of leadership development that I think is just going to be table stakes. Because growth, otherwise you end up having all this unconscious bias that sort of sabotages real change and change management. So there's a lot that we're going to be doing in that space. And finally, and perhaps most important, is creating these like recurring, constant ecosystems of learning and education, where it is almost a self-fulfilling prophecy of success because it's always on. And that's so necessary, because this idea that one workshop is going to do it, a couple of workshops a year here and there, a couple of classes online by yourself, that's just not going to get us to where we need to go as quickly as we need to get there.
Right. And you guys also have MAPE.
And we also have MAPE, and so a lot of what we're focused on is building that engine for the pipeline and doing that with inclusive and diverse workforces is really our focus with MAPE, which is to bring in a diverse workforce.
It's a great program.
Yes, thank you. It really is. And we're going to be doubling down because we see it as a jewel in our crown.
Well, I'm going to ask one last question, then we're going to open it up for some Q&A. My final question for you all from me is, how can people find purpose at work during these times when we're all feeling a little less passionate?
Are we feeling a little less passionate? I challenge the question only because I feel like people might be more frustrated. I don't know, but like what some of the examples that we're giving.
It's something.
Yeah, it's something. I think, but in the examples that we're giving, I think we're showing consumers show up. I think you were talking today about the vote in New York, and you haven't seen these lines ever, right? For us, like I have a serious example and a less serious example, but at World Business Chicago, we're dealing with ICE right now. That's right. I'm going to say it, whether it's political or not, and as some other cities are as well. And we are about attracting and growing businesses of all shapes, of all sizes. Same with talent. This is hurting our business community, and so I've been incredibly proud of how our business community has come together to support. So it's the small things and it's the little things. But I don't care what side of the aisle that you are on. No one can say that what's happening in Chicago with ICE is good for business. That we can agree on. So I think what you're seeing happen in Chicago, and we just need to be telling these stories as much as we can. So Manny's Deli today is a really good example, which is a local business delicatessen here. And as soon as the news came out about SNAP going away, they said, come to us, small business, come to us, we will feed you for free. So what can we do as World Business Chicago, as business leaders in Chicago, to support Manny's? You know what we can do? we can order in from Manny's. I found some crazy data that corporations order in. 82% of them like order in lunch or cater at least once a month. Over 30% once a week. So what we can do at World Business Chicago is direct all of those orders to places like Manny's, of which there are many, right? Or when you're talking about what's happening with ICE and the raids that are happening in those communities, those local restaurants are suffering. But guess what? You can order from those places and they can deliver them and they don't have to put themselves in harm's way, right? And so we're releasing information about the local businesses, right, that the larger community of business can help support. And I think it's incumbent upon Chicago to share these key learnings of what's working. And when we're seeing that passion and pride around it with other cities that are going through this, or cities that apparently, according to last night, are soon to be going through it. And maybe everyone's going to be going through it. So I think that's like a more serious example. But even on the like lighter side, as I said, diversity is one of the key tenets of the Chicago business community. And I mean that also in diversity of industry. So Chicago has very purposely, they don't want to become a Silicon Valley of anything. They want to have diversity of industry because they believe that spurs innovation, and we're the number one. So like if you think of LA, it's entertainment. You think of New York, you think of finance. But Chicago has an unbelievable diverse industry. Having said that, one of the things that I didn't know, and I've lived here for 30 years, is that we are the candy capital of the USA. I did not know that. And I thought, World Business Chicago is such an amorphous thing. And I didn't know that we had the largest candy capital. $3.6 billion of candy is either rooted here, headquarters here. And so I thought, well, gosh, we should be out with this, like to make sure people in Chicago know that, because when you are purchasing from all of these companies that have these roots in Chicago, you're investing in Chicago, right? You're investing in jobs, they're investing in the community. And so we went out with a campaign. I never in a million years would have thought I would be talking about a candy campaign that brought out the local passion in Chicago, and yet that's what we saw. And so it's been fun. I can't wait to see the numbers roll in. My understanding is that candy, despite the tariffs and despite chocolate being more expensive this year, supposedly record candy sales, right? And so just the simple act of buying Chicago-rooted candies for your trick-or-treaters and letting them know that it's from Chicago became an act of pride.
That's amazing.
That's passion.
I would probably go back in looking at how do you bring purpose to the workplace. One of the things that we just recently we're a part of the Kate Spade Foundation's Mental Health Summit, and the theme of the day was around what is your glimmer, which when they first said that I thought, what are we talking about here? And where it went is that finding what is your one glimmer each day that really motivates you to move forward, to do a good job, to have some peace, to have some hope. And I think that is a way that we can look at bringing purpose to the workplace and really going into the workplace each and every day of find your glimmer, find that one moment that is keeping you going, because we live in such a time right now of kind of needing to almost live day to day and just tackle each day. And so I thought that was a great takeaway. And I think it applies really well to purpose at work.
Yeah, since you tackled employee and talent, I'm going to focus on encouraging us all to evolve from the path to purchase to a path to purpose. And what I mean by that is when we think about typical business, it's very transactional. It's, sneakers, yay, on sale. But a path to purpose is so much deeper because it's about building shared values. It's about building a bigger idea. And I think we all crave being part of something bigger than ourselves. We all crave this idea that we can make a difference and that together we can change the world. And I think right now the world sometimes just feels like it's on fire. And so building a little consciousness into consumerism might actually be one of the smartest business strategies you'll ever apply.
Agree. Any questions from the audience?
Amazing discussion, thank you. I was really struck by your comment about employee and workplace-centred purpose, and there were two data points I remember. The first was from the Gallup Global Workplace Report that found that being in a workplace where you're actively disengaged is worse for your mental health and well-being than being unemployed. And the second was that in the 12 months up to last April, the number one disruptor globally to business was anxiety, depression, and absenteeism as a result of the pandemic. And I just wonder, I suppose two questions. Have we lost sight of the internal orientation of purpose while we chase external validation? And the second is, have we lost sight of the fact that we were globally traumatized and we're now pretending that we weren't?
You want me to tackle that first? I think those are great statistics, and they are spot on. You know, where businesses are losing trillions of dollars a year because of mental health issues in the workplace and absenteeism. I think that I do think that there has been this big push for external purpose and not focusing on the internal. And although there are some great companies out there who are doing it and doing a better job, but it kind of goes back to the way we started, and that is that you need to take the employee as your number one stakeholder in all of this. At the end of the day, the employee is the most critical point that you will have. It does not matter if you have shareholders, if you're public, private, whatever the case may be. If you're not starting with the employee, then you are going to have failure in this, and particularly with this newer workforce, like we talked about the younger workforce. Mm-hmm. So I don't know. That's my one comment to that. You all may have other thoughts.
Really?
You nailed it.
Yeah.
Jen, question over here.
Would you mind expanding on the merger and acquisition part with nonprofits?
I'm happy to. As probably most of us know, there are thousands upon thousands of nonprofits that are existing, and there are even more applications in right now as we speak, more than we have ever had to start new nonprofits. What I mean by this is that I'll use a quick example. Ovarian cancer, only because it's near and dear to me because of a family situation. There are multiple ovarian cancer organizations, and the challenge is there's only limited funds out there for ovarian cancer research. Yet all of those organizations are trying to go after the same funds, and they're saying that they're doing the same things. And the reality is that many times, unfortunately, in the nonprofit world, we live in an ego world. And what I mean by that is no one wants to get rid of their nonprofit because they're so passionate about it, and because it's what they started, and they think that, you know, I'm mission driven, and this is what I exist for a reason. You do, but until we all come together as nonprofits, until nonprofits decide to come together and say, wait a minute, you're not a competitor, we're complementary, we can collaborate more on this. There has to be something that changes within the nonprofit world, because eventually the funds are already running out. We're already at a place right now where it is so difficult to fundraise. And so nonprofits really need to be thinking more like corporations and businesses. And nonprofits need to reach a point where they need to evaluate mission and services and say, are we doing what no one else can do? Often with some consulting that I've done, we will ask an organization, we will say, if you closed tomorrow, how will it change the world? Will it change the world, or can someone else do what you've been doing? And we're going to have that mindset more in the nonprofit world.
Thank you, everybody. That was terrific.